Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us here in the council chamber. Before I officially call this regular meeting of the council, the first one of 2025, to order, I'll just quickly run through our agenda so that we have a chance to all be on the same page and know what's before us this evening. We have two presentations this evening to start our time. One from Paul Earle, representing Harbor Management, and then one from the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. And so we look forward to both of those. Those will both be 15 minutes inclusive of questions, because that will bring us right up to our posted public hearings. The first one starting at 7:35, and then we have two others to follow, one at 7:45 and one at 8:15. And if members of the public are here now or watching and hoping to come over and speak in one of those, the sign-up sheets are on the table by that entrance to the council chamber, and folks can sign up at any point for those hearings. Then we've got some routine business to take care of. We'll take a break for some subcommittee work and come back to finish it all up. So with that, I'll officially call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Monday, January 6, 2025, 7:00 p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Bowen. Here. Crowley. Here. Feldman. Here. Hausman. Here. Rotundo. Here. Spang. Here. St. Hilaire. Here. Sweeney. Here. And Flowers.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Kent. Councilor Rotundo, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilor Rotundo. As I mentioned, we have two presentations, but before we jump into those, I'd like just to acknowledge some of our city staff who are here with us this evening. Our grants director, Catherine Barrett, is here with us. Thank you very much, Ms. Barrett. Peter Dickman, our harbor master, is here as well. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Dickman. And Dave Gelano, our purchasing agent, thank you so much for being here as well. And of course, our budget analyst, city council budget analyst, Mr. Jerry Perry, is here with us. Thank you. And I do notice that Ward 6 school committee member Lorinda Visnick is back in her familiar seat after a little bit of a hiatus. Ms. Visnick, it's nice to see you in your new knee back here with us in council chambers, back in your seat. We kept it vacant for you, so it's nice to have you back in it. So let's go right to those presentations. As I mentioned, presenters, you'll have up to 15 minutes inclusive of questions and answers. And so we'll take those in the order that we have them on our agenda. And so the first, Mr. Earle, is you, and I'll invite you to the podium and turn things right over to you. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Council President and other council members. Thank you for inviting me to provide highlights of ongoing and upcoming Beverly Harbor Management Authority, BHMA, initiatives and to answer questions you may have. A detailed report is included with the meeting agenda, pages 97 to 112. The first 5 pages are the updates since I was last here about a year ago. A brief background, very brief background on BHMA. It was set up by the state in 1987. We support and partner with the city on various initiatives related to public access, waterfront development, use, and water-related activities. We also manage operations, mostly the municipal marina, prepare budgets, and finance sometimes up to 100% of public facilities related to the waterfront and related to the marina. I'm going to give you some brief highlights on what's going on recently and what's going on now. First, I'll start with improvements at Glover Wharf Marina. We've installed a windsock at the end of the public pier, which gives indications of wind direction and velocity. And it's a nice big red thing. It's huge, and it's really good for boats coming in. It gives them some idea, we're going out, some idea what's going on. DPW is about halfway through, maybe 40% through, completing the replanking of the pier. If you ever go down there, you see a big pile of wood. Hopefully that wood's going to disappear. We have done a grant with the Beverly Cultural Council, okay, for Not Spot, which Danielle was involved with doing and managed it. And it's a knot tying exhibit, which will be on the public pier in the spring. And it'll be driven by QR codes, and there'll be lines and stuff that people can practice tying 8 different kinds of knots by just putting their phone, the QR code, it'll fire it up. They're up on YouTube now. They were released today. So anybody who wants to just go in and Google Knot Spot can see one of the captains of the Beverly High School sailing team, who I know pretty well, being the knot tyer, and the coach being the commentator. So enjoy if you're interested. We're replacing all the benches on the public pier. That's 100% on our nickel. They've been there forever. They're decrepit. We're also adding 2 new ones, so there'll be 7 new benches and 3 new flat benches at the end where the fishermen and ladies sit. And we've decided to try to get donations for them. And we haven't done any marketing yet, but we do have 2 donations already. And they're $3,000 a piece to get a little plaque on there in memory of such and such, just like Lynch Park does. It's a little 1-page agreement they sign. It's pretty straightforward. We're also going to spend a good bit of time over the next 2 years on, I guess, what I'd call beautification of that whole area, especially the really ugly public access concrete platform between the restaurant and the water. It's really an eyesore, and we're looking to put some more benches in, figure out a way to keep it cleaner. Fishing's still allowed there on part of it, as you know, and it will be. And then put in some interactive displays, some planners perhaps, things like that, just to jazz it up a little bit. And, we've got a subgroup that's working on that. And we will be installing a new webcam for the public on Mission Boathouse. It'll be jointly sponsored by Mission Boathouse and BHMA in the spring. And we'll be able to see what's going on at the transient float. Right now, the thing's too low. We can't see anything. And also be able to see what's going on towards the bridge in the water. And, of course, the harbor master will have access, everybody will have access to it. So it should be a good resource. As far as marina operations go, we continue to do what we can to improve them. We're all volunteers, as you know. But better management of waiting lists. Starting this year, we're going to be charging to be on the waiting list. We've got really long waiting lists, and we want to get the people that don't even remember they're on it off, and those that want to stay on it will pay $50 a year. For commercial and for recreational, it will go against their first bill once they're off the waiting list and come in. So it's just held in escrow, and it's pretty normal practice for things like this. We're increasing the surveying of customers to get their input more, and as a result, for example, are investigating putting in an ice machine because an overwhelming number of the respondents said that would really be nice, that both commercial and recreational. We began charging for electricity use, which exceeds administrative fee this year. We've been testing it for a year and a half using sensors because we can't get that information from grid. It's all conglomerated on one meter and you get one number. So this is boat by boat, slip by slip. It's within about 4% of the national grid bill, and it's a little bit lower. So it's very consistent though. And we're starting this winter with the 6 winter customers. And we send out notices every month to them saying where they are relative to their fee, and they can unplug. They won't get any charge that next month, and then plug in again. But we were really eating a lot of money that we shouldn't have been eating. And we're continuing the automated data collection and actually increasing it on boat traffic, on how long boats stay, when they leave, et cetera, which is really valuable data for use in operations and planning. Promoting visiting Beverly by boat. As you know, we used Aqua as a reservation system. We started in 2023. In 2024, we had over 450 short-term visits of between 2 and 4 hours. That was up about 50% from 2023. Better weather, though, so you got to factor all that in. And 50 overnight stays at the moorings with about 150 nights. We took in, you probably don't care as much about it, it's in the report, but we took in about $14,000 against the cost of about $2,300, I think it was, something like that. And more importantly, though, I think all those people, because I track it a lot, are eating here, and they're spending money in Beverly and all that kind of stuff. So that's to me the most important thing. The $14,000 really isn't much. We continue to, well, infrastructure. We're still hoping to do the new hoist pier this winter, but it's getting really close. The bids have come in. We've selected a contractor. The bids are a lot higher than they were 2 years ago. Construction business on the water is still extremely expensive. And we're trying to figure that out. If we can't figure it out, we're going to have to defer the project for another year. We should know the answer to that this week. I think in fact, we have to know it this week, or the contractor's not going to have enough time. We continue to work with the Harbor Master Department, providing financial support in 2024, including a new camera at Lynch Park. We financed 50% of the truck. We paid to maintain the moorings maintenance for the transient moorings. And we financed the new radio, which I believe is integrated with the police and fire and all that, so everybody's knows what's going on everywhere, which is good. And we continue to support Beverly residents and visitors in other ways. We advocate for and expand public access, review an awful lot of Chapter 91, not everyone, but a lot of Chapter 91 applications. Phase 3 of the signage, the blue signs, was completed last spring. We provided financial support for the city's diversity sailing program, which was held for the first time in 2023, organized through the middle school and the high school. I think there were 5 participants. They didn't market it very well, but they have a good marketing plan for this year, so I'm more optimistic. But the tuition, it's tuition free, and it's being 100% covered by, split down the middle by the Harbor Management Authority and Beverly Sailing Association. So I think this is a good program, which hopefully will grow. And we continue to provide letters of support for environmental and other grant applications. Almost done. As you know, most of the major projects are supported by grants. They have matches. Most of the matches we split 50-50 between the city and us. Sometimes we pay it all, sometimes the city pays it all, but in general, it's a 50-50 split, which started about, I think, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, and I think it's good. The ones that are funded completely, the operations down at the marina, I mean, we manage the expenses, we manage the revenues, we make money. We make a margin of at least 2 to 1, 2 to 3 to 1, and provide good service. And that margin goes back into investments, which is why we've been able to invest since 2011 about $1.1 million of non-taxpayer dollars in multiple projects across the city related to the waterfront. The financials are in good shape, obviously. Capital fund's strong, waiting lists are long, footprint's too small, but we can't do anything about that. Finally, I would like to thank all members of BHMA for their dedicated volunteer work on behalf of the city, and especially those I've worked with since being pulled into this in 2010. And last but not least, mark your calendars now. We've got the 14th Harbor Fest coming up on September 7th. Labor Day is early this year. Sunday, September 7th. 1 to 5 at Lynch Park. Okay, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and thanks again for inviting me to give you this update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Earl, and thank you also to you for your work. I know you thanked your your other volunteers, but thank you. That's quite a legacy of volunteerism from you as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, we do have just a little time for a few questions for Mr. Earl, if there are any. Counselor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Earl, for your presentation and your service to the city on the Harbor Management Authority. You mentioned the split, about 50-50 with the Harbor Master Department on a handful of specific capital projects. Is that typically the policy for all departmental capital purchases from the Harbor Master Department, that it's?
No, this is with the city, not with the Harbor Master Department.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So with the city's Harbor Master for some of these specific capital purchases?
Well, Peter's been making requests. I mean,
Okay.
as you know, he's been getting things straightened out there and doing a great job. And but his budget is really, really tight, and we have some money, and we work very closely together. So I think since you've been on board, I think we're somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 that we've
Okay. And
brought forward to support with not a match, just to get things done.
And that's when specific projects are brought to you all as needing supplemental
Brought to
funding.
me, he comes to every meeting, which is wonderful. Has a report, he's on the agenda of every meeting, and he brings these kinds of requests. Yep.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Thank you for that. And the second question I had, you mentioned the increased revenue from the new reservation system, which is great. Are there any projects or other areas of spending in particular that you expect to see this new revenue invested in?
Well, that beautification thing around that won't be cheap. I mean, that could be $100,000, I don't know, over a couple of years, and to do it right. And so that, along with money we make on the marinas, on the marina, we'll fund that. And we plan right now to do all of that ourselves and not ask the city for support on that. We certainly can't fund putting in new floats and all that completely, and that's where the grants come in with a 50-50 match. We are looking for grants. Catherine's been helpful. We just haven't found anything yet for the beautification stuff, but we'll keep looking. So something might happen there to help. Yep.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Mr. Earl.
You're welcome.
That's it for me, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Houseman, did you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Mr. Earl for his leadership all these years. I know when I first started on the council, he was chair, he remains chair, and just from
Nobody else wants it.
the description of your report, the leadership you provided for all of the volunteers who are numerous and have put in, so many hours. So I just want to thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Houseman. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Earl.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you being here with us, and thank you and the rest of the Harbor Management Authority for the good work that you're doing. It's
Okay,
appreciated.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselors, I'd entertain just a motion for a 2-minute recess to let the Clean Energy Advisory folks be able to get prepped. All those in favor? Thank you. We'll take a 2-minute recess for some setup and be right back. call the council back to order. Thank you very much, everyone. And our second presentation is from our Clean Energy Advisory Committee, so thank you. I see many members of the committee here, as well as when I was introducing city staff, I didn't get a chance to mention that Arena Keefe, our Sustainability Director, is here with us. Thank you very much, Ms. Keefe. And so I'll turn it over to our Clean Energy Advisory folks for this presentation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, President Flowers. Thanks to the whole City Council for giving us the opportunity to present this evening on the Specialized Energy Code. I'm Jordan Stutt, Chair of the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. As President Flowers noted, I'm really pleased to be joined by so many members of our community and our committee. Pleased that Dylan Patel from the Department of Energy Resources could join us tonight. And thank you to Arena and Lisa for the much needed tech support. Last month, our committee voted to submit a proposed resolution to the City Council recommending adoption of the Specialized Energy Code. Thank you to our liaison, Councilor Houseman, for filing that resolution. I'm going to take a few minutes to provide some context around our decision to do that. I will then hand it off to Dylan to talk through some of the details of the code. I hope that we have a few minutes for Q&A. I imagine there will be a lot of questions. We probably won't be able to get to all of them tonight, but I'm looking at this as the start of a conversation. We are here as a resource, happy to follow up on any questions that you might have. And my hope is that within the next 2 months, you'll have all the information you need to make an informed decision and hopefully adopt the Specialized Energy Code. So with that, what is the code? It builds on the current stretch building code that we have in place. It includes a few new energy efficiency standards for certain types of new construction and new construction only. We believe the adoption of this code is critical to meeting Beverly's climate goals. It'll protect building owners from future costly retrofits. It'll reduce energy usage and energy bills. And importantly, it is a prerequisite for Beverly to be eligible for new funding from the state's Climate Leader Communities program. We know that buildings in Beverly are responsible for half of the city's greenhouse gas emissions. And if we want to meaningfully reduce those emissions in the future, we need to ensure that all of our new construction is built to a higher standard of energy efficiency. The best way to do that is by adopting the Specialized Energy Code. And this is not a novel idea from our committee. The Resilient Together Action Plan from 2021 identified the adoption of a net zero energy building code as a high impact, low cost priority. Here we are 4 years later, and we believe that this is the time to take that action. Before turning it over to Dylan, I do want to directly address the question of affordability. This was the first question that came up when we discussed this issue within our committee. It was the first question that came up in discussion with some of you. So I want to make clear that we are recommending adoption of this code because it is not at odds with affordable housing objectives, but rather in service of those objectives. That's largely through the development of passive house multifamily buildings, which are becoming increasingly common in Massachusetts. So far, what we've seen from the data is a cost premium to build to that standard of about 2%, but that's before taking into account all of the new incentives that are available specifically for this type of multifamily housing. Beyond the construction costs, it is really important to note that this type of building reduces energy usage by about 50%. And with energy costs rising and the fact that low and moderate income residents pay a disproportionately high amount of income on energy bills, it's really critical for us to reduce that energy cost burden as a piece of our strategy towards affordable housing. And I've highlighted here the Harbor Village project in downtown Gloucester, which was completed in 2021. This is a passive house multifamily building with 30 affordable housing units. It was built with a cost premium of just 1.8%, and that was before the funding that it received through Mass CEC. That was led by the North Shore Community Development Coalition, and based on the success of that project, they have since built similar passive house multifamily housing buildings in Salem. And I'd like to see us doing more of that here in Beverly, and adopting this code is a critical piece towards that end. With that, I will now turn it over to Dylan to talk about the details of this code. Thank you very much, Jordan, and thank you very much, members of the Beverly City Council. My name is Dylan Patel. I am the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the Green Communities Division. And as Jordan had mentioned, I'm going to give a few more introductory remarks regarding the Specialized Energy Code, keeping this at a very high level given the time constraints that we have tonight. But welcome to answer any questions that come forward. So the Specialized Energy Code kind of began as part of the Climate Act that passed in 2021, which authorized the creation of such a code as a means to achieving the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals, with a view of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. The Climate Act kind of created a new sets of policy directions, including the Specialized Energy Code, which works as one of many interdependent policies that help drive down the state's emissions. The Specialized Code does this through its impact on new construction. Given the fact that we are expecting fairly substantial growth in new housing stock between now and 2050, it's pertinent to have a code that can really drive down the emissions from new construction. Given the fact that, as we all know, buildings are long-lived assets, they last for decades, centuries, and any marginal shaving that we can achieve on the emissions, the operating emissions of our building stock compounds over time. The other important lever is the fact that by having a very stringent net zero energy code, we can create a growing market for new technologies such as heat pumps, novel kinds of low carbon embodied insulation that can then mature into the existing housing market. I'm going to go quickly over these slides, but the Specialized Energy Code, like I said, is an interdependent policy which really takes into the account, or takes advantage rather, of the fact that our electric sector emissions are going to drop substantially by 2050, and therefore we really want to be encouraging future electrification because the heating emissions associated with electric heating are going to be a lot less than they are for fossil fuels. The Specialized Energy Code exists as the pinnacle of a three-code pyramid, which exists in the state. And as we all know, Beverly is a stretch code community. It has been since it was a green community, and which was adopted back in 2011. And since the Specialized Code became available for adoption 2 years ago, this month, 48 municipalities have already adopted it. And just to give an overview of the geographic distribution, we have neighbors such as Salem and Swampscott being adoptees of the Specialized Energy Code. I'm going to pause a little bit on this slide. So when Beverly became a green community back in 2011, it had to achieve 5 criteria, one of which was to adopt the Stretch Energy Code. Since then, it has, thanks to great staff like Irina, has taken advantage of hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding, cumulatively up to $1.3 million in energy efficiency improvements in its 13-year history. And this puts Beverly in a really good place for going beyond energy efficiency into decarbonization. And recognizing this and recognizing the progress of a lot of municipalities across the state, Green Communities has launched a new grant program called Climate Leaders, one of it, which has similarly 5 criteria, some of which Beverly has already completed, the Specialized Stretch Energy Code being another one. And what Climate Leaders offers is up to $1 million in capital funding for renewable energy projects and other decarbonization activities, such as air source, water source, or ground source heat pumps, as well as technical assistance to that effect. So I'm actually going to go a little bit into the meat of what the Specialized Energy Code is, again, at a very high level.
So I think this code is probably, this slide is probably the most important slide of the deck. And these fast facts give a very high-level overview of what the code is. As Jordan had mentioned, the Specialized Energy Code only affects new buildings, and it does not contain any new provisions for all-electric buildings. So that is to say that all-electric new construction buildings in Beverly will continue to follow the existing Stretch Energy Code as it is doing. There is a lot of money out there, both from Mass Save and from the federal tax code. The tax code, which has not changed in past administrations and likely will not change with the current administration, which are available for energy efficient new construction, especially even for stretch code buildings. What the specialized code actually is, it creates new provisions for buildings built with fossil fuels, so that uses any kind of gas, oil, or propane for heating, cooking, hot water, and clothes drying. And it contains two new provisions for to that effect. One is to have for pre-wiring for future electrification of that specific appliance or appliances, as well as on-site solar where feasible to offset those emissions. So therefore creating an actual net zero building energy code. And therefore this creates basically two pathways. One in which for low density residential, a building can be built which is all electric and therefore has no different provisions as what already exists. Or it can be built with mixed fuels, at which point it needs to be built to the stretch code with pre-wiring for future electrification and solar where feasible. And this splits further into two, where for small houses or small to medium houses, it's about 4 kilowatts. And for large houses greater than 4,000 square feet, enough solar to be net zero to meet the energy needs of the house. And it's also the same for multifamily residential. However, there's a little bit more nuance here in that multifamily residential buildings are required to be built to passive house standards, which is a standard of construction that basically requires a tight thermal envelope. This basically means high levels of insulation and very good air sealing to minimize air infiltration, achieving energy reductions of between 50 to 70 to 80% of heating load needs. And in this case, you can have an all-electric passive house building or a mixed fuel passive house building that just needs to be electrification ready with no solar. And there are plenty of examples of multifamily buildings built to this way. Jordan had mentioned a multifamily affordable development in Gloucester. There are several in Salem, and I've also got a picture here in Hamilton. And this is a building style that is growing rapidly across the state. And I can show slides to that effect, but without further mention, I'm going to pass it over back to Jordan and to the council for questions.
Thank you both very much. I was saying, Mr. Sett, did you have anything to add?
I think we can leave it there and see if there's
Okay.
questions.
Well, thank you very much. I know we have a public hearing coming up, but councilors, I know Mr. Stepp pointed out this is the beginning of a conversation, but we have time for probably a couple questions before we jump in, if folks have them. And we'll consider this, again, the beginning and not the ending of this. Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and all the work that went into getting to this point. So I'm really excited to see it in front of us, have been looking forward to this and appreciate also the encouragement for us to take some time over the next few weeks and sort of get to the point where we could take an action. And was just hoping you could summarize what that action looks like from the council in order to adopt the code.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, so there are two separate items. One is the resolution that we submitted as a draft, open to your feedback on that, which we would like to see that receive all of your signatures on that as well as mine, and that would accompany the action to actually adopt the code, which is an administrative procedure and requires an order. Is that a
comprehensive. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you both for the presentation. It's certainly appreciated. Just to make sure I understand what we're talking about here, the passive house building standard would only apply to new multifamily construction, not new single-family construction, correct?
It's optional for single-family construction and required for multifamily construction.
And is 2 units considered multifamily for the sake of the implementation of this ordinance?
No, it has to be a multifamily unit that's greater than 12,000 square feet.
Okay. So thank you for that. That's helpful. And do you have any costs estimates generally for the single-family construction if a unit was built with what's labeled as mixed fuel here, which I'm assuming some amount of fossil fuels power the house? What would it cost for that type of single-family house to meet the electrification-ready pre-wiring cost?
So we do have cost estimates. They became available for us today. So apologies if I don't have them memorized. However, I do recall that the pre-wiring, so not the solar, is about $4,000. Now, that's going to range depending on how many appliances that you actually have to pre-wire for. But $4,000 was our median.
Okay, that's helpful. So thank you for that figure. And then similarly, I know there was discussion about available state incentives and I presume federal incentives for the solar installation requirements.
Yes.
Has there been any calculation of net against state incentives, what a future homeowner or contractor building a single-family home would expect to pay to add solar to those buildings?
So the capital cost for solar runs about, I think, between $3,000 and $4,000 per kilowatt.
Okay.
So for a 4-kilowatt system, you're looking about $12,000. With the tax regime, with the federal tax regime as it exists currently, there is a 30% tax credit on that through the Inflation Reduction Act, and then $1,000 state tax credit. And then there's also the smart tariff, and that creates that creates a complication because that in terms of how much money you're actually getting, because I'd have to sit in front of an Excel sheet for a couple of days to figure that out.
Okay.
I would also add with the pre-wiring cost, the $4,000 that I did say, that's going to be substantially less than once the building is actually built, and then you have to rip a hole out for a future homeowner. And that's really the point. These are higher incurred costs, but they essentially save future homeowners or the same homeowner who might want to switch in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And the last question I have for this evening at least, is there a way that if the city were to adopt an ordinance to exempt single-family homes and still comply for essentially the, I don't know the terminology, but the climate leaders criteria that seems to be our goal here?
The specialized energy code has to be adopted as is with no amendments.
Okay, so exempting single-family homes would not qualify?
That would not qualify, no.
Okay. Thank you for the answers to those questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor St. Hilaire, I saw your hand. We do have to go to a public hearing. Do you feel like your question is a brief one, or do you feel like it needs a little more time?
Might need a little time.
Okay. I think we should pause here, if that's okay with you, Counselor St. Hilaire, go to our public hearings. Counselor Hausman, I know that the proposed, some of what's proposed around this conversation is going to be likely referred to legal affairs tonight. Would you anticipate having a standalone meeting for more conversation? Counselors could ask fuller questions.
Yeah, it's my intention really to have sort of a standalone legal affairs that the entire council could attend to hear just, and have Mr. Patel back as well, and just do a more extended Q&A when we have additional time.
Thank you. I think that would be really helpful for all of us, so thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to pause us here. As I said, I do have to go to the posted hearings. I appreciate very much the presentation and your time, and we'll look forward to continuing this conversation as well, and we appreciate
Thank you very
this.
much.
Thank you, and thanks to the other members of the Clean Energy Advisory Committee as well. We will go now to our public hearing posted on Order 375. This is National Grid order to install one JO pole on River Street. Ms. Kent.
Order number 375, order that the City of Beverly, the City Council of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, January 6, 2025, at 7:35 PM at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, council chambers, relative to the National Grid to install one JO pole on River Street. And this was published on December 27th, 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I believe we have Mr. Kazadi from National Grid here with us. Mr. Kazadi, I'll invite you to the podium, and if there's anything that you can offer to help us open up this conversation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street. And yeah, we're petitioning to install this new pole because we want to transfer a transformer from the existing pole 2981 to that new pole. We'll be using the transformer, we'll be using pole 2981 for our new feeder entrance. So for safety reasons, we want to move that existing transformer on there to the new pole.
Thank you, Mr. Kazadi. Members of the council, are there any questions for Mr. Kazadi at this time or any further conversation? Councillor Spang.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you. This new pole, is it on the National Grid site or is it next to it?
It's next to it. It's on public property.
It's on, I'm sorry?
It's on public sidewalk.
Public
Yeah.
property? Okay. And the transformer that's going to be on top, it's going to be up in the air, right?
Yeah,
Not in the
yeah.
sidewalk?
Mhm.
Okay. Those are my only questions.
Thank-
Oh, and I have one more, sorry.
Go ahead, Counselor.
About how long do you think it'll take to put in the pole and move the transformer?
That's a day's work.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselors, other questions or further discussion on this? Are there members of the public who wish to comment in this public hearing? This is on order 375. Ms. Kent, I'd ask you to grab the list just to double check, even though I think not. Okay, thank you. So seeing none, we'll close that public hearing and refer it back to the Committee on Public Services for further action this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Casati. This brings us just about to the time for our posted public hearing on order 353. And I will mention before I officially open and have Ms. Kent read the order, if members of the public are here to speak in this public hearing or are on your way here following along on BevCam, you can sign up to speak on the sign-up sheets over by the window, and we'll take any public speakers in the order that they are signed up. So with that, I'll open that public hearing on order 353. Ms. Kent.
Order 353, City of Beverly, order that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, January 6, 2025, at 7:45 PM at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, council chambers, relative to a transfer request of $350,000 from the Golf and Tennis Enterprise Account Undesignated Fund, balance upon certification into a capital project fund to pay costs associated with planned course improvements. And this was in the newspaper on December 27th.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. I see that Mr. Brian Ailes, our City Finance Director, is here and ready at the podium to start things off. Mr. Ailes, thank you very much. Turn
Thank
things
you.
over to you to get us started.
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. We're here this evening to discuss a transfer from the Golf and Tennis Enterprise Fund. Fairly procedural matter, requires a favorable council vote to be able to transfer funds which exist in the retained earnings of that enterprise fund into a capital project fund to cover the costs associated with the project we're going to discuss this evening. To my left over here, we have two members of the Golf and Tennis Commission, Mr. Loud, Mr. Athanas, as well as our partners that help manage the course, GFMI Golf Course Management Company. So we're going to get into a little bit of the specifics of the project, but in terms of mechanics, I just want to make clear to all those viewers at home and to anyone that may not know, when we're talking about enterprise funds, we're not talking about taxpayer dollars. These are specially designated funds that are funded through fees received through the operation, in this case, of the golf course. So these are golf course revenues that are sitting in a bucket effectively that we're looking to repurpose back into improvements on the golf course, which we're going to talk about. So if you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer them, but for now, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Loud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. Mr. Loud, thank you for being here with us. And we'll turn things over to you.
When you get old, you need to put glasses on. Thank you very much, Madam President and City Council members. Happy New Year to you all. My name is William Loud. I'm the Chair of the Beverly Golf and Tennis Commission. I live at 18 Pearson Street in Beverly. I'm here tonight representing the Beverly Golf and Tennis Commission to bring you up to date on and provide, I wanted to provide a little background on what we're doing at the commission on one particular project. But in order to give you set the tone for it, I just want to give you a little bit of background to the Beverly Golf and Tennis facility. In 1910, as part of the United Shoe Corporation at that time, they built a facility for their company employees to enjoy a recreation site. That's what it was for. In 1970, it was sold to a private developer. Some 300 acres was sold to a private developer in 1970. And later on in the 70s, the city of Beverly purchased from that 300 acres, 168 acres, including the clubhouse that you see when you enter the facility. So the 168 acres was to develop an 18-hole golf course with the clubhouse. For the last 15 years, the facility has been managed by Golf Facilities Management and have been doing a fantastic job with it. And they've worked very close with the Golf and Tennis Commission throughout that period. Our current project is to improve play for the golfers on the 18th hole, in the fairway of the 18th hole. I think we provided to each of you the photos of a couple of pictures that show the reason we're doing this is the river that runs through the 18th fairway. See, all you guys that are laughing have already hit a ball at the 18th fairway, I know. But because of the overflow of that water, it makes it very difficult for the second shot to go to the green in the water. So it makes it unplayable. So the project to improve play has really been organized by our subcommittee. It's headed up by Arthur Athanas, who many of you I'm sure are aware of. And Arthur will present the details of the project on a topographical map, which I'll take a minute to set up here while he's getting ready. Arthur?
Thanks, Bill. Hi, everybody. Arthur Athanas. I live at 77 Hale Street. I've been on the Golf and Tennis Commission for several years. And as Bill mentioned, we work really closely with the GFMI people who are great. And this project, just going to give you a quick comparison. The pictures that you have in front of you show what happens when water accumulates. This water accumulates under a number of different circumstances. It could be a snowy winter, in which case the water melts and it sits there. The river overflows and backs up into the field of play. It could be a rainy spring, summer, or fall. So it's not, you can't really pinpoint it to one particular season or time of year. It just happens because it happens. It's over 100+ years, Mother Nature does certain things and it just evolves that way. So our job, as we saw it, was to be good stewards of the green space that's an asset of the city and see our way clear to fix it. So we engaged the expert kind of leadership of a golf course architect, environmental engineers, the conservation agent, the Conservation Commission, and through a series of different meetings and on-site, online exchange of emails, we all worked towards what we thought was a practical proposal so which we could repair and kind of restore the field of play so that that problem doesn't exist to the greatest extent possible. So if you look at those pictures, that gives you a good idea as to how much water actually backs up. And to just give you kind of a comparison for kind of practical purpose for those of you who don't play golf, if you were playing baseball at Harry Ball Field and the whole infield was soggy because of water and snow and the ball couldn't flow through, you couldn't play. Or if you were playing football or you're playing lacrosse on one of our fields that are grass, same thing would happen. You couldn't play. And that's exactly what this represents. So in the course of working through all of the details of how do we take this plan forward, what we arrived at with everyone's agreement and approval, including the DEP, was this topographical drawing, which I know you have in front of you. It's hard to read on an 8.5 by 11, and it's still not much easier here. So for practical purposes, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a golf course architect, there's a rule that when you displace water in a situation like this, it basically has to be a one-to-one sort of exchange. So our goal was to say, how much area is affected, and how do we find the areas that we can displace that equal amount of water to those areas, and that way that's, from an environmental standpoint, you're all on the same footing. So if you notice on yours, you'll see these light orange. There's one here, and then there's another one back here. Those are the three areas by measurement that equal the total amount of water that we would be displacing in that particular area. And again, I know it's hard to read. It's hard to even read those words. I blow it up on my computer and then I'm scrolling across. But to give you a sense of kind of like in layman's terms, if you were to stand on the 18th green and look backwards, the fairway is a slope that goes as you're looking from right to left down to the river. And in this particular project, what we would be doing is kind of taking a part of the hill and just flipping the material down so that we're raising the land up so it's above the water table. Now, at the same time, we'd be expanding the irrigation system and putting in the right kind of drainage so that that water would come down that hill and then flow right to where those water displacements would be and into the river. And through the whole course of this process, working with everybody that I've listed already, we would be returning like all of the native plants and grasses and trees. There'd be a retaining wall on the other side of the river that would help keep everything kind of from eroding and falling backwards down into. We'd also remove a couple of trees, move the golf cart path, and replace the bridge that goes over the river, obviously for functional and safety purposes rather than aesthetic. So at the end of the day, what we're really looking for, and we put the budget together, sent it out to bid with the help of Dave Gelano and the finance folks, and we were successful in getting a bid that came just under what our budget was. In the normal course of events, there's a contingency that's on top of that at about 10%, and then on top of that for things that we can't foresee, for instance, if as you start to dig into the hill, even though we've tested for ledge, if there were circumstances under which we would need to have to do some additional work, then we would have to do that, and we built that into the $350,000. So I know that was a bit of a quick run through, but does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Loud, as well. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Feldman.
Yes, I appreciate the explanation and the maps. This is very helpful. And I just had two questions. One was, so the Conservation Commission and everything, like this has all been in terms of the wetlands and who's approved that, all the permitting is in place then with the Conservation Commission?
Yes. So what we did was, before we even put pen to paper for a proposal, we had the conservation agent come out with the environmental engineers and the golf course architect. He guided us through what we would probably need to do. Then we had the whole Conservation Commission out to the site. Everybody had the opportunity to kind of vet the project, ask questions, and express their concerns. So we worked through all of those, and we haven't had any issues since then.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question was, first, the bid actually looks, for the amount of work done, seems what I would think is reasonable for the amount of work that it sounds like will need to be done in terms of the grading. My only question is that the fund account has what I think is 665,000 in it in retained earnings. I just was, right? I just was wondering, with a project of this size that's almost half of that balance, which there's obviously sufficient funds, I wasn't aware of, in the past, like, are there any other things that could come up that could really impact, like, what, in a typical year, how much more money would be needed for other projects of that sort, historically speaking, I guess, just from a financial position?
We've done, I would say, a substantial amount of work over time. I mean, I would kind of leave that to the history, the real history, to Bryant, but over the past, I would say within the past 7 or 8 years, we've done a couple larger things, like placed the pumps in the pump house for the irrigation system, the golf course, upgraded the technology for the irrigation system, things like that. But in the next year to 3 years, I think we don't seem to have anything, put the building aside for a minute, from the golf course side, that will really be this substantial.
Okay. Do you have anything to add? If Mr. Perry would like to weigh in.
Yes, Mr. Perry, it looks like you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, a couple of things. Thank you and good evening, everybody. I'll just get my comments out of here quickly. First off, there's a typographical error in my report to you. There are actually $672,310 in the fund balance of retained earnings. So my apologies for that. And it's also, I should have known this myself, it's not a par 5, it's a par 4 for you golfers. I have discovered this water myself, personally. So very quickly, though, Council, those are great questions on a financial matter. I'm comfortable as your budget analyst for the spending of the retained earnings of this dollar amount. It conforms to our policies. To me, it's a little over 50%, but I'm comfortable with it. I've been an advocate as your budget analyst over the last 8 years, trying to push the administration to spend some of these retained earnings properly, within the enterprise funds. I'm real comfortable with this, financially speaking. I think it's the right course to action. As Mr. Eales, as traditionally always says, he is correct. We only can spend this within the enterprise fund. Well, it's this, water, sewer, it doesn't really matter. But so they're spending it within the enterprise fund itself. And so I'm very comfortable as your budget analyst spending this money. I suppose anything can happen, but I don't, I've had several conversations with Mr. Loud in the last 2 weeks on this. They're not really anticipating anything crazy coming along. The other thing I'd add to the comments that have been made, keep in mind when water cuts through there, it can cause damage to the fairway there, and as such, that gets expensive too. So if we can correct this, hopefully we'll have less damage and less cost moving forward. The only other thing I'd add, and then with my recommendation, I'll sit down, Mr. Loud and I really had some great conversations. It was good to get to know him on the phone a bit here. I promised him I have to kind of Shanghai Mr. Ailes on this one too, but I'm gonna try to sit over the spring, talk about the bigger projects that, really the field house down there and the challenges we have financially. We're gonna just sit down and kind of put our heads together, see if we can come up with some thoughts and ideas. I think one council may have broached that subject with the commission, so that is something we're gonna try to take a look at as well, but that's gonna be a real challenge. That said, Madam President, as your budget analyst, I'd recommend adoption of the mayor's proposal on this. I think it's a sound practice in utilizing the recommendations of the commission. I think it's a wise decision, so I would recommend adoption. And I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you. Councillor Feldman, all set?
I'm great, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor St. Hilaire, and then we'll go to Councillor Spang.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess like Mr. Perry, my slice has found this fairway as well, and I know it's needed. It does make it unplayable a lot of the time. I guess my only question is would a project like this qualify for CPC funding? And if so, was that looked at or considered? And if not, why not? Mr. Perry or Mr. Ailes?
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Your first part of your question, it is eligible for CPC funds. Yes, it would be. My understanding in discussions with Mr. Loud, they have I don't know about the specific project, but they have requested quite a few projects over the years. I don't know specifically, maybe Mr. Ailes knows more, certainly probably knows more, but it is eligible for it. Those funds are pretty tight, as you well know. They, a lot of competition for that, and they just felt doing the retained earnings is the right approach, which I actually happen to agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Spang.
Thank you, Madam President. I had a similar question to Counselor Feldman in that the minutes from some of the recent commission meetings make it sound like there's a walk-in freezer that needs some help, and I understand that's in the clubhouse and not part of the golf course. But was wondering around if you know around the ballpark of would the retained earnings be able to cover the cost of a new walk-in freezer if it fails?
Yeah, we're working on replacing the major components of that freezer. Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Loud. Counselors, are there other questions at this time for Mr. Loud, Mr. Athanas, Mr. Perry, Counselor Bowen?
Thank you. So my questions have largely been covered. So just wanted to confirm, because it's come up as sort of a separate topic, that there are discussions underway around the clubhouse and that they don't depend on there being a certain level of retained earnings in this account to move forward. It's a bigger issue that will need different sources of funding and wouldn't be impacted by the same sort of pool of funds directly.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Ailes.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's fair. It's something we've all kind of grappled with for the past many years to try to figure out a plan on how to address that large project. There's not a solution that would rely solely on just what's in the fund balance. The scale of the project that has been studied at the time was around, I think it was about 16 million or so. I'm sure that's escalated since then. But something like that, you're looking at probably $750,000, $800,000 per year bond payment, right? And so this fund operates at about $380,000 a year annual operating revenues and expenses. And in addition to that, we have this retained earnings. So there needs to be some combination of a solution which will involve what's left of these retained earnings, operating capacity within the annual operating budget, very likely some CPC component. And even then, there may be a need to kind of get a little creative with some additional funding sources as well if it were determined to go forward with that project and the scale that's been studied.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Ailes. Counselors, any other questions at this point? Were there members of the public who wish to speak in this public hearing? Nope. Okay. Well, seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and refer that back to Finance and Property for further action this evening. Thank you again, Mr. Loud, Mr. Athanas, for your time and your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Ailes and Mr. Perry as well for your assistance with this one. And we'll take more action on that later this evening. We will go now to, we have a little bit of time before our third posted public hearing, which is posted for 8:15. So let's go to acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Counselors, we have 3 sets of meeting minutes that we can approve. Our December 16th, 2024 special council meeting, our December 16th, 2024 regular city council meeting, and December 18th, 2024 special city council meeting. Is there a motion to approve those 3 sets of minutes? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0, and those are approved. As we continue on and take up communications from His Honor the Mayor, I just wanted to mention for the council, but also for anybody else who usually closely follows how we move through our agendas, that as we begin 2025, we'll move through the agenda portion of the meeting a little bit differently than you might be used to help with our meetings moving more expeditiously. The city solicitor had suggested to the city clerk and to me that rather than the clerk reading the full content of every communication from the mayor, she would be able to read the order number and the description, and we'll refer those to committee. And so I know that's a slight change, so I wanted to mention it, but we'll give it a try. So Ms. Kent, let's go to communications from His Honor the Mayor, please.
Order number 1, a grant for $349,272 for the Beverly Harbor Master Department from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency Port Security Grant Program to purchase a 27-foot patrol cabin boat.
Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 2, a grant for $18,900 Recycling and Dividends Program grant through the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection's Bureau of Air Waste.
Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 3, a donation for $500 from the Edward A. King Jr. intended to benefit the Senior Center and a 4-ticket movie package valued at $82 from the Cabot Theater for the Council on Aging.
Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property.
Order number 4, a reappointment for Catherine Keefe O'Hare to serve on the Board of Trustees of the Public Library.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 5, a reappointment for Ivy Mahan to serve on the Board of Trustees of the Beverly Public Library.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 6, the reappointment for Marshall Hanley to serve on the Board of Trustees of the Beverly Public Library.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services as well.
Order number 7, a reappointment for Kevin Andrews to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 8, a reappointment for William Cosmas to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 9, a reappointment for Brian Ailes to serve on the Beverly Affordable Housing Trust.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 10, a reappointment for Darlene Nguyen to serve on the Beverly Affordable Housing Trust.
Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs.
Order number 11, a reappointment for Martin Lawler to serve on the Beverly Golf and Tennis Commission.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services. Let's go to communications from other city officers and boards, please. And here, councilors, you'll notice one other slight change, which is that the suggestion was also made that if there are like orders coming from the city clerk's office, they can be referred, if they're going to the same subcommittee, as a group. And so you'll see there's some like that here. So Ms. Kent.
Order number 12 from the city clerk, a request for approval of the 2025 municipal election calendar with the amendment of a type.
Thank you. Yes, so councilors, you have a amended calendar in front of you. There was a Scrivener's error on one of the dates. And thank you also, Councilor Bowen, for picking up on that as well. So is there a motion to approve on the floor Order 12 with that correction? Is there any further discussion? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to flag in reviewing the calendar, I had asked the clerk's office about the fact that some of the election dates, the 22nd, 23rd, and 2nd, fall over major Jewish holidays. So we confirmed the dates are set sort of by charter and by the time that needs to take place between certain dates. So, you know, I take some comfort in the fact that the early voting that has been expanded gives people multiple opportunities to vote and expands that access if the day itself is not accessible. But just wanted to flag that for the group as we go forward with it, that's acknowledged and that there is, alternative access for folks who can't vote on that day.
Thank you very much, Councilor Bowen. And a good reminder that as we're communicating, we can help to amplify that message that there is early voting and access for multiple opportunities for people to be able to make sure they can cast their vote. Any other further discussion on Order 12? All right. With that, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 13 from the city clerk, a request for approval of the early voting schedule for the 2025 municipal elections.
I would entertain a motion to approve that on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. That carries 9-0 as well. Thank you.
Order number 14 through 17A from the city clerk for licensing.
Please refer that group to legal affairs.
Order number 18 from the city clerk, resubmitting a renewal application for National Grid to install a regulated station on Livingstone Ave for a new order number for 2025.
Please refer that to public services.
Order number 19 from Council Rotundo and Councilor Spang, Beverly Harbor Management Authority report for the November 2023 through December 2024 report.
Thank you, Councilors Rotundo and Spang. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that report before we receive it? Well, thank you both for your work in helping to make sure that we have it, and thank you again to Mr. Earl for being here as well this evening. Is there a motion to receive and place on file Order 19? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 9-0.
Order number 20 through 27 from the city clerk regarding licensing.
Please refer that group also to legal affairs.
Order number 28 from the Beverly Contributory Retirement Board, letter to file its annual budget.
I would entertain a motion to receive that and place it on file. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 9-0.
Order number 29 from Councilor Sweeney, a proposal that the city council adopt a local option veteran property tax exemption created through section 23 of chapter 178 of the Acts of 2024.
Councilor Sweeney, is there anything that you wanted to mention about that before it's referred to committee?
Just that this is the almost identical, other than some slight word and changes in the cover letter proposal that I submitted before the council this past November. So just bringing that before us for this year.
Thank you very much, Councilor. So let's refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property, please, Ms. Kent.
Order number 30 through 30D from Councilor Houseman.
Councilor Houseman, this can be referred as a group as well to legal affairs. Anything that you'd like to say about these before we do so?
Just to reiterate that it's a complicated proposal in terms of content, and so it is my intention to work with the Energy Advisory Committee and Mr. Patel to create additional opportunities, maybe a standalone hearing for the council to have a more extended conversation.
Thank you very much, Councilor. So we'll refer that group from Councilor Houseman to legal affairs as well. Let's go to communications, applications, and petitions, please, Ms. Kent.
Order number 31 from National Grid to install underground facilities on Cabot Street beginning at point approximately 340 feet north of the center line of the intersection of Elliott Street and Cabot. And we need to set a public hearing.
All right, thank you. We'll refer that to Public Services to set that public hearing this evening. We can go to unfinished business from a previous meeting. Order 279 of 2024 will remain under unfinished business at this time. But Order 280 of 2024, I would entertain a motion now to receive that and place it on file. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Carries 9-0. And that brings us to our third public hearing, which is posted for 8:15 this evening. Do we need a motion to accept a late file?
No, we already accepted.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is on Order 376. So we'll open that public hearing, and Ms. Kent, please.
Order number 376, the City of Beverly ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Monday, January 6, 2025 at 8:15 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, third floor, City Council chambers, relative to a transfer request of $128,500 from the Reserve for Union Negotiations 11324/57810 into the Police Department as a result of the recently agreed upon Superior Officers contract. And this was in the newspaper December 27th.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Ailes, I see you're at the podium and ready to get started here, so we'll turn things over to you as we open up this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And before I kind of get into some of the details, I just wanted to thank you all for being expeditious with scheduling this public hearing so that we can get this business behind us and get the officers hopefully paid their retro and everything with your approval. So what you have before you this evening is a request for $128,500 to be transferred from the Reserve for Union Negotiations, which is a budgeted amount in the FY25 budget specific for this purpose, into the Police Department's operating budget, which will allow us then to process adjustments to pay grades as well as retro pay back to the beginning of the fiscal year for the 18 superior officers that this contract represents. I'm here this evening with Assistant City Solicitor Mr. Dole, who was took a large part in the negotiation process, and he can speak to any specifics within the MOA. You should have all received a copy of the MOA as agreed upon by the union and the city. It is effectively 3% for each year. There is an additional adjustment for the post adjustments that take 3 years as well. There's also an adjustment to some differential pay for the lieutenant rank, which will also have a corresponding impact to the captain rank. And then there's an adjustment to detail rate, and I believe there might have been an adjustment to longevity as well. So very similar to the other contracts that you've seen through other unions. Oh, and and one of the night shift differentials, also a 1% adjustment in that. So aside from a few very unique aspects to this particular union, the wage pattern is similar to the ones you've seen. I also just want to, I don't know if your memo addressed this, Mr. Perry, but the reserve for union negotiations was originally budgeted $750,000. So far, you've approved a transfer out for DPS of $98,600, the librarians for $36,112. This $128,500 transfer, if approved, would leave $486,788 in that reserve for the remaining contracts on the city side to be settled. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ailes. And thank you also to Assistant Solicitor Dole for being here with us this evening. Mr. Perry, before we get into questions, would you like to add anything to the conversation at this point?
No, Mr. Ailes covered everything. I did write to you the end of last week. I agree with him. They're pretty consistent with what I'm seeing in some of the other contracts. We still got a few to go, I think. I think the patrolman, fire, and the BME, I think, am I correct, Mr. Ailes, still to go? Am I correct on that? We haven't transferred funds for that yet. Right. We're going to have to address financially transfers. I wasn't aware that they settled, but that's good to hear that. So we will have to deal with that, the $480,000. We'll, I'll be sitting with Mr. Ailes hopefully the next week or so to look that over. Bottom line, Madam President, members of the council, I recommend adoption of the transfer order.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Councilors, are there questions at this point? Councilor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one question specific to the pay increases tied to post. Mr. Dole, do you know if department-wide, the city's police department has met the certification standards that act set out?
I don't think I'm competent to, or familiar enough to answer that question. I think that would probably be better directed at Chief LaLasher.
Okay. I guess I asked, assuming that these increases were tied to some sort of standard being met under those certifications, right?
In the most general sense, there's been a number of additional requirements and new requirements to police officers, police departments, as a result of the post commission. Everything from certification to decertification to training, additional new training or expanded training, de-escalation, use of force. There's a whole galaxy of standards that continue to be rolled out by post. So the base wage adjustments in recognition of those changes are you're seeing that's very common with the departments throughout the Commonwealth right now. And we do know there are some additional requirements that are going to be coming down from post over the next few years also. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dole. That's all for me, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilors, are there other questions or comments at this point? Okay. Were there members of the public who wish to speak in this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close this public hearing and refer that back to the Committee on Finance and Property for further action this evening. And that does bring us to the time when we can take a break for some committee work. Councilors, I would entertain a motion for a brief break for committee work, and then just with the reminder, as always, that if there are more substantive things to be taken up, as Councilor Husman was alluding to for his committee, chairs will schedule standalone meetings for further discussion. Is there a motion for a break for some committee work? All those in favor? That carries 9-0, so we'll take that committee break now. We'll have Finance and Property stay here, Legal Affairs in the committee room, please, and Public Services in the hall. Thank you.
on Finance and Property. Good evening, folks. I guess we'll start with the three grants. Ms. Barrett, thank you for approaching the podium. Grant, I guess the first order, 001, is a grant for $349,272 for the Beverly Harbor Master Department to purchase a 27-foot patrol boat. Can you tell us about this?
Yes, I can. So with this grant came through from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the Port Security Grant. We did receive this grant 7 years ago in 2018 to purchase a shallow watercraft. And I worked on that with former Harbor Master Dan McPherson. And so we had great success with this federal grant, which is a complicated, challenging grant to write. And so our current Harbor Master, Peter Dickman, is here with us, and I'll have him come up in a second and talk about the new boat. But we had great success with the grant, as I said, and it pays for 75%, and boats are not inexpensive, I learned. So we were happy to receive it a second time, and the Harbor Master Dickman and I worked together on the grant, and yeah, we did it. So there is a match for the grant, which we're splitting with the Harbor Management Authority, and Brian Ailes will talk to that if you have any specific questions about it. But do you want to come up and say a few words?
Good evening. As you know, we have an aging fleet, a boat fleet, so we've been working on replacing and some updates for our equipment. I identified this boat, and luckily the grant is available, and we got it. So this would be our main patrol boat. What we use now is a 27-foot whaler. That would become our secondary patrol boat, so we wouldn't let that go. Our secondary patrol boat right now is a 1995 Hurricane Rip. It's an old Coast Guard military surplus boat. The fire department used it for a while, and then the harbor master department used it for a while. There's a lot of maintenance issues. It's we need reliable boats for an emergency service department. So we've had emergency haul-outs of that boat. It's becoming an issue. So we'd like to keep up to date and replace boats as necessary. And this should serve the city well for a while.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dickman. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Colleagues, any questions? Councilor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by thanking Ms. Barrett and Mr. Dickman for your work on this. Obviously, this is a sizable grant to pay for the large majority of the purchase, which is great that we're able to do that. Just one quick question, Mr. Ailes, based on the letter, I would assume there's going to be a follow-up free cash transfer request for this $60,000 or so for the city's portion?
That would be correct. So there would need to be a separate public hearing
Okay.
For that match component.
Okay.
But I would just, respectfully caution that if that's something you think you probably couldn't support later on down the road, we wouldn't want to accept the grant in that case, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Mr. Ailes. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything from you?
I'm good, thank
you. Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve Order 001.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That order is approved 3-0. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move along to order number 2. This is a grant for $18,900. It's from the Recycling and Dividends Program through the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program from Mass DEP. What can you tell us about that, Ms. Barrett?
Thank you. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So we've received this grant. I've been here over 7 years now. So in all 7 years, we've received this grant. And generally each year, Mass DEP has awarded us more funding because we've accumulated more points. It's a points-based grant. So for every point you get, I think now it's up to $3,500. This year, we received a little bit less funding in grant money than last year because we didn't meet a couple of the points. It's getting a little bit more challenging. Some of the cities and towns that have a charm facility, which is for recycling hard to recycle materials, got that point. We don't have that in Beverly, and we don't have citywide composting for all residents. So we are starting to lose a few points, but still getting a good amount of money to support our recycling initiatives. So, and no match on that grant, which we always enjoy.
Is there something specific this funding would go to?
So the funding can go to a lot of different things.
I did bring the list if you want me to highlight what.
I just didn't know if there was something identified already.
Nope, it's pretty broad. I'm just trying to see here, you know, let me see. Yeah, there's kind of a long list here. Hold on.
That's okay.
We've generally used it for education. We can use it for the reusable shopping bags when we when we rolled out some of the stores were going to be not using bags any longer, so we ordered reusable shopping bags and distributed those for free to residents at the different grocery stores in Beverly. Those were paid for through this grant. Obviously, recycling initiatives, trying to reduce the amount of waste that we send to the incinerator so we can save on money. So there's a whole list of things we can use it on, just about anything except for mattress recycling. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion that we approve Order 002.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. That's approved. Thank you. Order 3, this is a $500 donation from Mr. Edward A. King Jr., intended to benefit the senior center. Looks like it's movie ticket package valued at $82 from Cabot Theater for the Council on Aging. So that was a very nice donation from Mr. King. Thank you if you're listening, and I would entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved 3-0. Okay, moving along here. I'll take up order, let's see, 353. This was the Beverly Golf and Tennis proposal that we heard about earlier today, $350,000 transfer for the capital improvements to the golf course. Any further questions, colleagues?
None for me.
Okay, I would entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. As approved, 3-0. I'll go back to the full council after we break. Thank you. Order 376, this is a transfer request of $128,000, $500 for the police department union negotiations. Any further questions, comments, counselors? I would entertain a motion that we approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is approved, 3-0. Counselor Sweeney, the last order we have is your proposal, Order 29. Do you want to talk about that tonight, or is that something that we could push off to a further meeting?
I would say let's hold off to a future meeting. I'd like to arrange a conversation for this committee with Mr. Perry and Mr. Golden at some point. Mr.
Yeah,
Perry,
just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, I have reached out via email to Mr. Golden, set up a meeting with myself, Councilor Sweeney, and Mr. Ailes to try to discuss this and work it through. We hope to have something back in the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully.
Okay.
Certainly before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, let us know as we enter the new year here. We can
Yes.
schedule a special meeting or.
Yeah,
we would need to pass it in advance of July 1st.
Yes.
So we have plenty of time.
we have plenty of time. I thought
Okay,
you
with
had a
that, we'll hold that in committee, and I
public
think
hearing?
that concludes our business. Mr. Perry,
Is
did you?
there a public hearing? Am I missing that?
I think the only public hearing being set tonight is by public services.
That was another committee. I'm sorry, my apologies.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
It's good to keep us on our toes.
Yeah, keep me on the toes.
So that concludes our business, I believe. Anything else to add? Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Committee on Finance and Property.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. right. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll call the full council back to order following that subcommittee break. And we will go to reports from committees. Ms. Kent.
Order number 1, the Committee on Finance and Property, whom they refer the matter regarding a grant for $349,272 for the Beverly Harbor Master Department from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency Port Security Grant Program to purchase a 27-foot boat, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Are there questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal. Oh, Councilor St. Hilaire.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out this order requires a city match of $58,212. So in addition to, I guess, approving or perhaps amending this order, I would suggest we make a motion to set a public hearing.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Why don't we take a vote on the recommendation of the subcommittee, and then next, as recommended by Councilor St. Hilaire, we'll take a vote on the floor to set a public hearing for that match. So the question comes first on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order recommendation coming out of the subcommittee. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. That carries 9-0. And I would entertain a motion to set that public hearing, as Councilor St. Hilaire suggested, for our next regular meeting, which is a Tuesday meeting because of a Monday holiday. It's January 21st, and to set that public hearing at 7:45 p.m.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll have that public hearing on the match portion. Thank you, Councilor, at our next regular meeting.
Order number 2, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a grant for $18,900 recycling dividends program, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 3, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a donation for $500 from Edward A. King Jr. for 4-ticket movie package worth $82 for the Council on Aging, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
That carries 9-0, with our thanks to Mr. King for that donation for our senior center.
Order number 353, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a transfer request of $350,000 from the Golf and Tennis Enterprise account, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. That carries 9-0. And thank you again to Mr. Loud and Mr. Thanis for being here tonight to help us do the public hearing portion of that.
Order number 376, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom refer the matter regarding a transfer request of $128,500 from the reserve for union negotiations into the police department, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and the adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
That carries 9-0. Thank you.
Order number 31, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding a National Grid to install underground facilities on Cabot Street, have set a public hearing for January 21st at 7:30 p.m.
Councilors, I would entertain a motion to set that public hearing as recommended by the subcommittee. That's for January 21st at 7:30 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 9-0, so we'll have that public hearing in our next regular meeting, again, a Tuesday meeting as well.
Order number 375, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding a National Grid to install 1 J-pole on River Street, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the petition be granted.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
That carries 9-0.
Order number 18, the Committee on Legal, oh, wait a minute. Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding to install a regulator station on Livingstone Ave have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the application be granted, and cooperating by reference the January 2nd, 2025 email from National Grid Rep. Diane Cuddy.
Thank you. Counselor Bowen, as Chair of Public Services, is there anything you'd like to add for the benefit of full council?
Yes, thank you. So everyone may remember, this is an application that came to us middle of the fall, and we had some discussion about the regulator station. It's an underground box that is proposed to move from one side of Bridge Street to the other on Livingstone. There was a really healthy discussion with neighbors about the impacts of that on sidewalk access and what the box itself does, why it needs to be replaced. And so we had sent some questions to the National Grid team. They responded by meeting with the neighbors, looking at additional potential sites, evaluating them, and responded with how those sites were evaluated and what their updated plan is, which has some points referenced that we thought were important to incorporate with the approval because they talk about changes they're willing to make to minimize the impact on the neighbors. So they had proposed putting in 2 SCADA boxes, and now it will be a single, slightly larger, but not as big as 2 box. The appearance of the box can be changed to make it blend in a little bit better. And they're also looking at using the traffic management plan for when it's actually installed to test out different traffic patterns on that block because people taking that corner at speed was a concern of neighbors. So really working with the neighborhood to figure out how to do that project in a way that achieves the infrastructure goal they're trying to achieve and the neighbors can live with and that maybe you can learn a little bit more. So that will be attached with the order and we felt in committee that addressed the issues that neighbors had raised. So.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there other questions or comments on this one? All right. The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order with, as the subcommittee recommended, the incorporation of that response email from Diana Cuddy of National Grid that Councilor Bowen just summarized. All those in favor, aye. Aye. That carries 9-0.
Order number 14, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding Alba Auto, 449 Cabot Street, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted for a probationary license until April 7th, 2025.
Are there questions or comments on this one? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal from the subcommittee to approve with a probationary license until April 7th, 2025. All those in favor? Aye. That carries 9-0.
Order number 15, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding Class 2 license for Brito Corp., 8 to 10 Railroad Ave, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 16, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding a renewal application for Class 2 license for Burgess Auto Sales at 18 Lothrop Street, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 17, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding Councilor St. Hilaire's request to refer this order to Parking and Traffic for the area of 54 Middlebury Lane in Pete's Park, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Receive and place on file.
Are there questions or comments on this? I would entertain a motion then to receive and place on file as recommended by the subcommittee. All those in favor? Carries 9-0.
Order number 17A, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding Council St. Hilaire's request amendment to Ordinance 270-41 to prohibit parking at 54 Middlebury Lane, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Receive and place on file.
Are there questions or comments? Councilor Houseman, were you about to say something? Okay. I would entertain a motion then to receive and place on file as recommended by the subcommittee. So moved. All those in favor? Aye. That carries 9-0. I see, Councilor Houseman, you were just getting ready. I see now.
Order number 20, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding a renewal application for a taxi livery service for Tri-City Services, for 10 vehicles. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the licenses be granted.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 21, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a new license application for a Class 2 license for D Brothers Auto Service, DBA Bridge Street Automotive, 83 Bridge Street. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this license.
Are there questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 22, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a new application for a taxi delivery license for JTB Transit Solutions at 302 Broughton Drive. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 23, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a renewal application for a Class 2 license for American Petroleum, Inc., 586 Cabot Street. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Carries 9-0.
Order number 26, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a lodging house probationary license updates for 23 Waller Street. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the license be granted until June 2nd of 2025. Probational.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? The question comes on the acceptance of the proposal from the subcommittee to approve that probationary license until June 2nd, 2025. All those in favor? Carries 9-0. Oh, all right. Thought you had more to read for us.
No, we're good. Less reading for me tonight.
Councilors, are there any announcements or reminders from members of the council as we come to the end of the meeting? Well, I will just remind us all and remind anyone following on BevCam, as we had mentioned earlier, our next regular meeting is a Tuesday night meeting because there is a Monday holiday, day after Martin Luther King Day, and so we'll be meeting on January 21st. We did just set 2 public hearings for that evening, and that meeting will begin at 7:00 p.m. And of course, members of the public can join us here in council chambers or follow live on BevCam. Thanks to BevCam always keeping us streaming. Thanks, Kim, for being here with us this evening as always. And thanks to our partners at BevCam for making sure our meetings are always accessible for folks. If there are no other announcements, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. That carries 9-0. We're adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.